Welcome to Once Upon a Geologic Time in the Palo Duro Canyon. My name is John Holbrook. I'm a professor of sedimentology at Texas Christian University, and me and my students have been out here for about 8 years trying to unlock the sedimentological secrets of the Palo Duro Canyon. We do research in sedimentology, and though through 4 graduate students and 1 undergraduate student later, we've learned a few things about the Palo Duro Canyon we'd like to share. This story is going to be about mega monsoons across the great supercontinent Pangaea, coming in and off the Paleo-Pacific, rolling in and hitting the Ouachitas, making great floods, pouring out across the dry lands of the time. So join me as we go once upon a geologic time in the Palo Duro Canyon. The story of the Palo Duro Canyon begins in the ancient continent of Pangaea, the one land of Alfred Wegener, where all the continents were joined together. And when this continent started to break up in the late part of the Triassic, it made great basins. These basins began to fill up with sediment. The Palo Duro Basin, particularly in this case, starts to fill up. We get the Quartermaster Formation at the base of the canyon, fluvial deposits associated with the early part of the Triassic. Then a great hiatus happened after that. Through the middle part of the Triassic, soils formed across the region, making the Palo Duro Geosol, the beautiful Spanish skirts, the colored layers that form at the mid part of the canyon. Then after that, deposition started to reinitiate in the late part of the Triassic with the Tecovas Formation, the first formation of the Dockham group, fluvial channels, lakes, and floodplains, making these slopes, which are capped by the Trujillo sandstone. Amalgamated fluvial channels, all channels cutting into each other, making a good sandstone cliff that forms this middle ledge. On top of that, we reinitiate deposition of channels, lakes, and floodplains in the Cooper Canyon Formation, within which is the famous Lighthouse Formation off in the distance. At the top of all that, deposition stops for a while. We move on to the Miocene before deposition reinitiates with the Ogallala Formation, a great sheet of sand that and conglomerate that covers the high plains, pouring off the Rockies and getting caliche deposits, giving it its white color. And then on top of that, it finally ends somewhere around 3 million years ago. And we start incising that apron and head cutting back through that over about 300 kilometers to get to here by the Red River, cutting the Prairie Dog branch of the Red River, coming up in here, cutting the Palo Duro Canyon. I'm standing in the Triassic. I'm here at the edge of the parking lot for the Texas Play on the uphill side, just off the parking lot, standing in the Quartermaster Formation. This is early Triassic dryland fluvial systems, floodplains, channels, formed in the early part of the Triassic. Then suddenly deposition stops. We go into a phase of exposure. And that's where the Palo Duro Geosol comes in here. All these beautiful colored layers right in here are alternating soils that record a period of time throughout much of the middle part of the Triassic, where this area is exposed and eroding. Not one soil, multiple layers of soil. The other thing that tells us soil is we get lots of these little guys. All of these little things they call blueberries, soil concretions. They're coming out here, weathering. Watch your step. They roll. And so on top of that, the Tecovas Formation is depositing later in the late Triassic, burying this soil, and then later the Trujillo up on top of it, making up the ridge. The other thing that's kind of cool here is we get this great balance rock where the debris has washed off the side, it's collected, it's weathered around it, and left this little piece of Trujillo channel sandstone sitting on top, balanced here for your enjoyment. We're about 100 feet downhill from the first pull-out going uphill here in the entrance road to Palo Duro Canyon, near the road sign. This point, what you can see is a stack of channels. So somewhere down around our feet, this is going to be one of the first channels. This channel got clipped off by another channel. Then right above it, what you get is this beautiful scour right in here that you can trace all along through here that shows the third channel stacked up on top. So it's a stack of 3 channels all cutting each other off. What you can see here in the middle of them is this beautiful antidune right in here with the crest about right in here and the other crest over here. What this allows us to do is when you contract the distance between the antidune crest, you can calculate using the Kennedy equations the actual water depth that was flowing over the antidune from the grain size and the length of the antidunes. That means you can calculate discharge of the flow over the channels if you have some sort of sense of the width of the channel. But the beauty of it is knowing the depth of the flow, you can calculate the shear stress that these channels were exerting on the bottom, which allows you to calculate slope. And what we determined from this is the slope of these channels isn't especially high. It's about 10 to the minus 4, 10 to the minus 5, what you would get from a normal continental interior river like the Mississippi River or the Missouri or something. So they're not really steep channels. They've had gushers of flow though that have come down through here and high discharge events that have made these big standing waves that generate these antidunes. The other thing that's happened is as these channels happened right up in here, that's a little shooting pool up here into the top one where the flow came over and dipped down and slashed back in a good standing wave. Then the whole thing got cut off by this valley fill right over here that filled up with channels and floodplain later. Okay, I've thrown out a couple terms for you. I've thrown out this idea of antidunes and chutes and pools. I'm going to introduce you to a couple more terms, upper and lower flow regime and subcritical and supercritical flow. First off, lower and upper flow regime. In lower flow regime, we're looking at sedimentary structures that are recording flows that are fairly slow. They make dunes and ripples where the sediments get pushed over the top, backside of the dune, cascade down the front. Things like the Mississippi River and the Brazos River do things like this. But as the flow starts to kick up, what happens, those dunes will get washed out and you'll see the flow start to flatten and the top of the water surface starts to conform to the bottom of the bed. The first stage of that is upper plain bed, just a flat bottomed bed. This is the beginning of what we call upper flow regime. It gets more intense. As we keep upping the flow, we start the bottom undulating. Then you see the water surface and the bottom undulating together in a state we call stable antidunes. As the flow keeps kicking up and keeps getting more intense, you'll eventually see those antidunes going unstable. You'll see the water dive into pits and break on the other side. You get things we call chutes and pools. If you keep going further with this, you'll eventually get cyclic steps where you will see the chutes and pool type structures, but they will just be in echelon, one after another. So we're standing at the second pullout on the entrance road to Palo Duro Canyon, and this is the perfect place to see what a channel fill looks like in one of these upper flow regime channel systems. So we're going to look right here at this one. The beginning of this channel fill, this is our channel fill right here. The beginning starts down here at this scour. This has been floodplain mud where the channel has topped over and laid mud down on the floodplain. It's laid down and then the channel has cut through it at a later date, making this nice beautiful scour. Then after that, the cut has cut out the channel, cut out, scoured in. It's starting to wane the flow. The sediment is starting to fall back in. And as it does, this is what's going to show you this is an upper flow regime channel. We have this beautiful antidune. So watch this lamination. It's kind of flat through here. It's going to come along and it's going to hump over right there. So right in here it's going to hump over and then it's going to go back down and then start back up again. That is an antidune. This is a beautiful example of an antidune right here, and an antidune crest and one of the best places you can have to see what these look like. The flow would have been going this way and there would have been a big standing wave right in here. Somewhere around upper flow regime, critical flow conditions, big standing wave would have been great for whitewater rafting. And then after that, the flow starts to wane some more. The channel starts to fill in with fine grained sand, and then as it fills up, as the flow is weakening, it moves to ripples. So this is largely rippled fine sand in here. Finally, as the flow is settled out, the flood's over, it's all done, you go to floodplain mud. Then this channel right in here, this whole channel fill has been cut out later by a valley that has sliced through it right in here and cut out the end of this channel. So it's removed part of it and then started to fill up with floodplain muds and channels of this valley fill once more. We're standing at pull-out 3 going up the hill, or pull-out 1 if you're coming down the hill, but the purpose of being here is to explain why does all this upper flow regime action happen. So looking at the outcrop here, what we see is big sheets of sandstone. These big sheets of sandstone record big sheet flows of water, where the channels were cut out and excavated during colossal floods that made large sheet flows and then filled back in rapidly as the flows waned, leaving these large sheets from very wide, shallow, extremely fast-moving channels of upper flow regime flows. These would have been reminiscent of what we've recently seen in the San Juan River in the west, flowing through a dry landscape. But it also happens in places like recent catastrophes in North Carolina with Hurricane Helene. Palo Duro Canyon was the home for many Native American tribes. The Kiowas, the Apache, the Comanche, the Cheyenne, the Arapaho. They would all hunt bison while riding horseback, and each were magnificent horsemen. Then, September 1874, they were attacked by the 4th U.S. Cavalry. The cavalry forcibly took their land and stole 1,300 horses. They killed 1,000 of the horses and kept 300 for personal military use. The battle was fought to ensure that the tribes would be immobilized, preventing them from gaining more strength. The Battle of Palo Duro was one of many in the Red River War, which ultimately forced the tribes off the plains and onto the reservations. We're back on the rim of the Palo Duro Canyon, except this time we're about 20 miles down the canyon to the east. And we're sitting on the south rim at this great overlook that the state of Texas has built for us. You can come here and visit public area anytime and see this magnificent view of the Palo Duro Canyon. What you notice right away is it's much wider here. And so the stratigraphy, though, is still the same. At the bottom of the canyon, the floor is the Quartermaster Formation, our early Triassic unit. But on top of it, our Palo Duro geosol is right there, plain to be seen in nice, vivid purple colors. On top of it, the Tecovas Formation. And on top of that, the Trujillo Formation, our amalgamated channels. And on top of that, just a little bit of a sliver of the bottom of the Cooper Canyon Formation. We're on the 207 outcrop, just a little further to the south at the southern end of the outcrop. This gives us an opportunity to see what the internal structure of these channels looks like. And what is very clear when you look at the Trujillo, it's stacks of channels, channels cut into channels, channels amalgamated with channels. The other thing is you can see a very sharp surface with the underlying Trujillo. That's a regional unconformity. It's a regional scour surface where the Trujillo is scoured into the underlying Tecovas. We think this was because of a major climate change where the monsoon strengthened, but we're still exploring that a little bit. What you also see here is one of the more unusual things that we see in these upper flow regime channels, the first and only documented actual upper flow regime side-attached bar. And so these accretion surfaces are coming down, feeding into a broader channel. And so this is kind of unusual because this is more like a point bar building into a channel. But in these channels that cut and fill so abruptly, it's a little bit of a conundrum how you actually do that, but there it is nonetheless. The other thing that's spectacular about this is not just a bunch of channels stacked on top of each other. This is a bunch of valleys laterally amalgamated with each other. And they're all stacked up. What has happened here is the channels have cut down, cut a valley, filled it up, moved over, cut down, filled up a valley, and laterally amalgamated these valleys. This is probably driven by climate changes from the strength of the monsoon upstream coming out of the Ouachitas. We're here at the Permo-Triassic boundary. It's the boundary between the Permian and the Triassic, two of the big eras in geologic time. This is the biggest mass extinction that happened on Earth. 90 to 95% of all species died. It was a dramatic cataclysm environmentally. It's usually tied to the volcanic explosion, the Siberian traps. Volcanic explosions have changed the atmosphere and caused a major climatic cataclysm that we're still trying to unravel. The date on this was set right here at this ash. Some work by some colleagues of mine that I'm not going to claim, but it's Benil Tabor and John Geisman were leading the team working on this. They dated this ash at about 251.74 million years ago, give or take about 250,000 years. So that means this section, somewhere around this ash, is the Permo-Triassic boundary where it all happened. We're in the lower quartermaster member. So all the quartermaster formation above us, right in here, is going to be Triassic. Everything below us is Permian, and this is where it all happened. The Dockham group is a treasure trove of late Triassic fossils, vertebrates. It's got the mass of them. It's got the collection that you dream of. It's got the early birds. It's got the early reptiles. It's got the early mammals. It's got amphibians. And it still even has some of the holdover therapsids, the Permian monsters that survived the Permian mass extinction. One of the more popular of these fossils is the phytosaur. The phytosaur is an early archaeosaur. Think huge crocodile. There are also fossils in the overlying Ogallala Formation. Ogallala Formation is no slacker either. It has produced a huge fossil collection of Miocene mammal remains. More popular of that one is it produces examples of the early evolution of horses, the three-toed horse. Let's pay a visit to a quiet day in the Triassic. It would have been a dry land much like it is today, with a stream flowing down it. This is the Prairie Dogtown Fork of the Red River. It cut the canyon starting about 1 million years ago and up to around 10,000 years ago to its present state. This is what it would look like under quiet water conditions. We're standing here on the bridge on 207 over the Prairie Dog Fork. Simple, low flow, but it's a raging torrent when there's a flood. We're back here at TCU where it all started. Thank you for joining us for Once Upon a Geologic Time in the Palo Duro Canyon. Once again, my name is John Holbrook. I'm a professor. I do research here. I want to thank all my great students who did so much work here. Undergraduate Sam Greer, graduate students Grayson Lamb, Sam Walker, Anthony Skoleski, Blake Bazooka, and all the students that will do some work on here, which could include you. Please come in and join us. Until next time, thank you for watching Once Upon a Geologic Time in the Palo Duro Canyon.